Good morning. My name is Dr. Basetti Mallikarjun, working in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Department of Information Technologies. In the series of course lectures in this course of operating system, today the topic is system calls. So, last few videos we discussed about process thread, context switching, those all. So, system call is involved in every operation. See, system calls are the fundamental interface through which user programs request services from the operating system kernel. So, kernel system calls are involved in the kernel. They act as a bridge allowing applications to interact with hardware and manage resources without needing direct access to the kernel and internal workings. This kernel and internet workings, essentially system calls are predefined functions that the operating systems makes available to the user level process. So user level in the operating system, there is two things has been involved. One is user level process, and the other one is kernel level process. Kernel is the core part of the operating system. So system calls, this is kernel. Let me take this kernel. System calls directly interact with that kernel. So there is a bridge between user level applications and kernel level applications. So let me check that system calls provide the interface between the process and the operating system. So system call is nothing but it is an interface. See the figure of system call in the right side. There is a kernel mode inside the operating system. This is the operating system layers. So the system call is interface between the user mode. This is a user mode and a kernel mode. So that kernel mode is a privileged mode that the system calls interact this privileged mode. So every modern operating system supports these two modes in which a program can execute. There are two modes. One is user mode, another one is the kernel mode. The user mode is execution done on behalf of the user. So this is the user mode. This execution done on behalf of the user. And monitor mode and kernel mode, this is execution is done on behalf of the operating system. So that's why kernel mode is a privileged mode. The execution is done on behalf of the operating system. That is the most important point we are noticing, that system call interact with the kernel. So that is the privileged mode to interact with the user mode. Okay, coming to user mode in detail, the working principle of the system call. User mode, if a program is executed in user mode, then the program will not have direct access to the memory, hardware or system resources. But when a program is executing in user mode, sometimes it may need access to some of the resources. Then it make a call to operating system saying that it needs to access to certain resources. Then the program is switched from user mode to kernel mode, which is called context switching. Yes, we discussed already this video in my previous lecture in the concept of context switching. In the user mode, user process is executing. This is a step 1. In this figure, I explained detailed that user mode, the user process executing is the first step. Step 2 gets the system call. Step 2, then the execute the system calls in the kernel mode. Again, the system calls return to the user mode. Step 3. So, step 3 also is the user mode. in the kernel mode that system call to be executed. So this entire process in inner between the operating system. So kernel is the core part of the operating system. Then user mode is the next layer. So this is the working principle of the system call. This is the, let me discuss in detail. Monitor or kernel mode is a executing mode that the program will have direct access to the memory, hardware or system resources. When program is executing in a kernel mode, then it is in a privileged mode. So drawback of this kernel mode, in a program is executing in kernel mode, and if the program is crashed during the execution, then entire system would crash. So kernel is very sensitive part in the operating system. If kernel is lost, the total operating system is crashed. That's why kernel is a privileged mode, because the programs are executing in this kernel. Coming in detailed discussion of kernel and user mode. When the process is under execution or executed under the user mode, then next step, the process require some operating system resources to complete the task. The process makes a system call. System call in operating system are executed in kernel mode. On completion of system calls, the control is passed to process in the user mode. The process continues the execution in the user mode. Let me see this. One is user mode. That's next one is the kernel mode. Once the user process start in the user process in the user mode, then start working that process in user mode, then it can interact with the kernel. This is again that gives the process to the user. So this 3 and this is the 4. So that's we discussed in the last video. Yes. System calls. There are different types of system calls. So totally those are 5 system calls: process control, file management, device management, information management, and communication. So process management, file management, device management is the 3. 4 is the information management. 5 is the communication. System calls in an operating system can broadly categorized into 5 main types. So those are process control, file management, device management, information management, and communication. These categories encompasses the fundamentals of the user programs user to interact with the operating system kernel. So process control, when process P1 is P2 and so on, n number of processes are working at a time in the system. It comes under synchronization. That's we discussed in last videos. Coming to the file management. So file, there are many file operations: open file, close a file, delete a file. These all file operations coming to this file management. These system calls can work process control and file management. Coming to the device management, all input output devices are working under this device management. That device management process the information that comes under the information management. Then last is the communication. Coming to the important of the system calls of file management system calls. These are file management system calls. In this file management system calls, open is one of the function that opens a file for reading or writing. A file could be of any type of like text file, audio file, etc. Read file reads the data from a file just after the file is opened through opens function system call. Then if some process wants to read the data, we use the read function. From a file, then it will make a read function and system call. Write function is a write system call, a data file. Whenever the user makes any kind of modification in a file and saves it, then when this function works, write function. Close all previous open file, close when this close function. There is a specific importance in the files, that is a seek function. This is very interesting system call. It moves the file pointer within a file. This call is typically made when the user tries to read the data from a specific position in a file. For example, read from a line -47. Then the file pointer moves from the line 1 whenever it was previously to line 47. So this is an example that file pointer moves that line to 47. So seek function. See, the working of system calls where there is an all applications are interact with the kernel. So this kernel interact with the files, networks, hardware and everything. Let me take a process control, or it may be a file management, or it may be a device management, or it may be information maintenance or communication. Is a comprise system calls in operating system. From the user mode to kernel mode, the system calls in computer system, especially in operating system, handle all the system calls is a crucial process. The kernel can interact with files and networks and hardware and everything through the system calls. System calls is a crucial role in the operating system. It can involve everything to the part of the kernel. Coming to the utilization of system calls, there is a hardware is the most innermost layer of the operating system hardware. Then all user can interact with the hardware through program controls, error management, input output devices, resources, file system, auditing and communications and security. The system calls the process is being run if the process requires certain actions that need to be carried out by the operating system. The process has to go call the function which can interact with the kernel to complete the actions. This special type of function call is known as system calls in operating system. System calls provides the interface so that the process can communicate with the operating system. This can interface the kernel. So system calls, then above area is user interface. The final process is the programs. Okay, right. This is the way of the system calls interact with the operating system. So how it is interface? That is the innermost part is operating system. Then outermost layer is system call. Then above layer is system programs. Final layer is a application program. System calls and system program play an important role in the functioning of operating system. The system program serves as a link between the user interface and system calls. The importance of system calls used in operating system. These system calls used in the Linux. In previous some system calls open, close, seek, those system calls used in Windows. But these system calls used in the Linux. Those are wait, fork, execution, kill, exit. Wait function, there are scenarios where the current process needs to wait for another process to complete the task. So wait in the scenario, wait system call is used. Coming to fork, this system call creates the copy of the process that has to call it. The one which has called fork is called the parent process and the newly created copy is called the child process. Execution function. This system call is called when the running process wants to execute another executable file. The process ID remains the same while the other resources used by the process are replaced by the newly created process. Kill. Sometimes while working, we require to terminate a certain process. So kill system call is called which sends the termination signal to this process. Exit. When we are actually required terminate the program, an exit system call is used. Exit means the completely terminate the program. Kill means the process is to kill. Execute means the process is to execute. Fork means that parent process as a newly created process is copied from the child process to parent process. That is a fork process. Wait. The process should have to wait, needs to another process once completion or the previous process. So these are the scenario of system calls used in the Linux operating system. These system calls have its own importance in Linux, like Ubuntu operating systems, some operating systems, Unix operating systems use these are the importance of system calls. Finally, I'm going to conclude that system call is the interface through which the process communicate with the system call. Computer system operates the two modes. One is user mode and another one is the kernel mode. The system call interact with the kernel mode to the privileged mode. So process execute in user mode and when a system call is made, the mode is switched to user mode to kernel mode. So this is the concept of context switching. The context switching takes place through the system call. Once the system call execution is completed, the control is passed back to the process in user mode. System calls in operating system are made by sending a trap signal to the kernel, which reads the system call code from the register and executes the system call. Major types of system calls are process control, file management, device management, information maintenance, and communication. Rules for parameter passing while making a system call or it should not be floating number. A limited number of arguments should be passed if the arguments are more. Okay, we have seen the system calls in detail through this video. So we gather these information through the Abraham Silberscraft book of operating system of 8th edition, and also we studied through the William Stallings book operating system internal design principles in Pearson education. So students, we are discussing about the system details to this video. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.